Hey everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of Texas Narcos Podcast. Excited today to host Dakota with Leo Den Training. How's it going, Dakota?
Man, it's great. How are you?
Man, I'm awesome. I appreciate you coming all the way down to Texas and meeting with me and getting on the show.
It's not too far of a drive from Oklahoma, so we're happy to do it. Spring break, we got a little fun weekend anyway.
That's awesome. Texas is nice anyway, so it'd be nice to take a break from Oklahoma, right?
Yeah, especially we've been getting burned up with wildfires lately.
Oh, really?
With the wind and stuff, so to get away for a little while was fun.
Yeah, there's not a lot to stop the wind up there.
Nothing.
It's just like all flat.
Yeah, it was terrible. We had several people lost their houses. And all kinds of stuff. So
wow. And you're up in the Oklahoma City area?
Like just south. My home agency is about 30 minutes south of Norman, and then the district attorney task force that I'm on has 3 counties that range from 30 minutes south to about 45 minutes north of the Red River. So
okay, all right. Which interstates do you get?
I have primarily I-35. We've got a lot of jurisdiction on I-35, and then we have 15 or so miles of I-44.
Okay.
So we spend most of our time on 35. It's been pretty good to us, but 44 is a good highway as well.
I got you. Well, cool. Before we get too far in the weeds on the particulars of what you do and everything, let's. I got a T-shirt for you right there. You get a Texas Narcos T-shirt.
Awesome. Thank you.
There you go.
It's got a Longhorn on it. I'm not sure if I can wear this around Norman, but
yeah, you know. Anyway. Well, hey, I got people all over the country with those shirts. So I got people in California, Kansas. I got people in Cuba, of all places. So anyhow, I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. I got one for you too.
Awesome.
Awesome. You'll be the first to actually have the brand new design.
All right.
Wild. So
I like that.
We just added the logo really big on the back so everybody knew what you stood for. So.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So if anybody wants to get a Texas Narcos T-shirt, you can go to 12K9 Apparel. I'm going to put a link to it in my video description. Look for the Texas Narcos T-shirt, and if you use the promo code Texas Narcos, you can get $5 off. And I believe you got your
they're
apparel on there as well.
They're taking care of us as well. So we have hats, shorts, the T-shirts and hoodies, and some mugs on there now too, like cool. Tumbler cups.
All right. Well, go check out 12K9 Apparel. Like I said, I'm going to put a link on there, and you guys go check it out if you want your official Leo Den and Texas Narcos Podcast apparel. So, well, let's jump right in. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? Where do you work at now? You don't have to give your exact agency, but just actually, I guess we kind of already covered that part. But as far as the geographical area, but why don't you give us your background a little bit?
Okay. So obviously my name is Dakota. About 4 years ago, I started Leo Den. That was a passion that was bred out with another company I started teaching with, and found out that I really, really love to influence the next generation of cops and to see their benefits out of it. And so, you know, that's kind of where this company came from. As far as my background, my father was in the military. We kind of bounced around a lot when I was a kid. We ended up landing at Tinker Air Force Base in my early childhood.
Yeah.
And then he retired out of that when I was in high school. So it's kind of where we landed and where I grew up is around the Tinker Air Force Base area in Oklahoma City. So, you know, went to high school, went to college. Of all things, I had a pre-med degree.
Wow.
I wanted to be a doctor.
Wow.
And then, and we can get into it if you want, but I was literally called by God to go into law enforcement. And so I changed my major and went 180 degrees the other direction and got out of college and went to the academy. So it was kind of a dramatic shock to my then wife. We had just gotten married, and I was, you know, hooked her in thinking we were going to be a doctor family. And then we got into law enforcement instead.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah, that's a big shift.
Yeah, it was. It was a culture shift for the whole family, really. You know, my parents were kind of shocked and everything like that. But my dad was in the military. My mom she's still in the medical field. And so the sense of service was always really strong in my family.
Yeah.
And, the story is that my wife and I were carpooling to work, and we both worked downtown Oklahoma City at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that week before, I was kind of in that rut of trying to figure out what I was going to do in life, and didn't really feel like going to med school and being in a hospital all the time was going to be my happy place.
Yeah.
And so we were talking at church about having signs from God and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And my now brother-in-law kind of had a prophetic moment. He was like, I think you're going to get pulled over this week. And I was like, great, jerk. Thanks. And he's like, oh, no, you'll get a written warning for something stupid. And like, this was just out of the blue. It was kind of an unjust conversation. And literally that week, like Thursday of the next week, I got pulled over, and, they pulled me back to the car, and they're talking to me. My wife's sitting up in our truck, and the guys are writing a piece of paper. And I was like, man, I don't want to bother you. I don't want to influence you, but can you tell me, are you writing a warning or a ticket? And he's like, man, I'm just writing a warning. He's like, your taillights, they're too shiny. They blinded me when you drove by. And I was like, oh, you're really joking, aren't you? And he's like, no, I don't know if you waxed them or what, which I had waxed it was a show truck. I had waxed my truck.
I've never heard of that violation.
I haven't either. I've done this for a long time now, and I've never heard of it either. But he wrote me a warning for it, and I shook his hand and told him he changed my life, and told him the story of what happened, and he's like, holy crap. So he's like, if I was a recruiter, I'd hire you right now, because I don't think we can argue this. And so tried out for 3 different agencies that year, and Norman was the first place that hired me, and I just felt like it clicked and it worked out. I've had a really blessed and fruitful career there.
Mm-hmm.
Gotten to do a lot of fun things. Met some great people. I'm best friends in my life in that place. So,
how long have you been in law enforcement now?
So this is my 15th year.
Okay.
I started in 2010. I guess we're just starting our 15th year. And I did 5 years in patrol. I worked afternoons and nights. And then in 2015, I transferred to our narcotics unit and did plainclothes and UC work, the surveillance and the long-term investigations. Then I worked as a task force agency, still in that unit, but as a part-time task force officer with a federal agency, still doing narcotics work with HIDA type stuff. And then, I got into some bigger cases and some more long-term conspiracy types. We were also doing, that unit's kind of small, but very nimble, like a lot of narc units are.
Yeah.
They get tasked with the whatever thing of the chief's office. Or
other duties as assigned.
Yeah. So, we started working some gang stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I had a really good case filing some state RICO charges on a gang that was causing a lot of problems. And that was kind of a really big case for us.
Mm-hmm.
I was a case agent on it, but none of those cases happen with one person investigating them.
Yeah.
So
it takes a whole team.
Tons of help on that one, but it took 10 months, and we actually were able to get all of them put in prison for a long time.
Wow.
And so it made a big difference in the community there. Learned a lot of words and lingo. I had no idea what it was.
Yeah.
And then probably about that time, I started transitioning. My best friend got hired in our unit to work the interdiction side.
Okay.
And I thought no better partner than my best friend. So I started working to try to transition out from the plainclothes work to working with him. Still in the same office, same district or division and section within our department. So it was essentially just a lateral transfer of what seat I was sitting in during the day. And then I went out there in 2021 and been having a blast since then. Yeah,
that's awesome. Now, your agency, is it a sheriff's office or is it a police department?
A police department. My home agency is a police department. The interdiction team that I'm specifically assigned to, they take those 2 officers, myself and my partner, and we're on a task force that's full time. Mm-hmm. So, on paper, we're still detectives with that same police department, but in reality, we're working day in and day out for the district attorney's office. And we have another partner from another home agency that works with us. So there's 3 of us out there.
Okay.
And the best group of attorneys and bosses up there, our Our task force chief is amazing. He gets us everything. They take care of us. And we've got the greatest group of attorneys in all 3 counties. And so we can take whatever cases to whatever 3 counties that we get. And they trust us to make the cases and do them right and testify. And we train a lot of officers within our district too.
So is the judicial district, is it a 3-county judicial district?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. There's a few of those down here. Some of the smaller areas that don't have enough people to have enough work to have a single county. So like the county I work in, there's the district attorney's office, but then there's a judicial district for like, the judges, like the district judges that covers 3 counties that also includes ours. And then there's another one that covers another 3 counties that includes ours. And then there's another judge that is just our county, but our district attorney and our county attorney is just our county. So, so he's in charge of prosecuting everything in our county. So
in our judicial district, they share some judges across counties. There's one judge I know that's a district across 2 counties. Yeah. The major county seat is Cleveland, which is much bigger. They've got a lot of attorneys in there. That place is hustling all the time. And then there's McLean that has 3 attorneys working in it. And then there's Garvin that has 3 attorneys working in it. So we get really close with those other 2 because we're going to land our case on one of those 3 desks each time we come in. So
depending on what county you're in.
Right.
So, are there people in the task force from other agencies as well? Like how many people are in the task force?
Total, what do we have? 5. We have 5 total on the task force that are like working cases and stuff. And we have our chief, and then we have the most amazing property evidence IT guy that he's the jack of all trades. He does all that stuff for us. But
so he handles all your in-car video stuff, your body cams. He handles all your seizure evidence and stuff.
Everything. All the counting the money to taking care of all that stuff. I don't think that place could run without him. He's amazing. Yeah. And then, like I said, we've got literally the best boss in the world with that task force chief. He's done our job for a long time, knows what we need. Anytime that there's questions, he's answering them. We can call him and be like, we've have this issue. And he's like, oh, this is what you do there. And he takes care of us, make sure we got our equipment. They don't spare any cost to make sure we're taken care of, and they don't waste time getting it done. So.
Now, do you guys run LPRs on your cars?
Yeah. That's been a big point of contention in Oklahoma, actually. Really? There's a lot of defense attorneys that are fighting that kind of stuff, between Flock or Vigilant, Motorola, LSAG, all that stuff. There's a pretty decent sized group of attorneys that are fighting that stuff right now. But we've got some good legislators that are trying to help us, and we've got an arbitrary law kind of in the books that makes it a little difficult, that gives them an argument to have. Yeah. So we're waiting on some judge rulings and stuff right now to see how they're going to go. But like I said, I think we got legislators that are helping us. Tim Turner's trying to help us settle that thing down and get it to where cops can help.
Yeah. Do you guys have x-rays and stuff?
We do have an x-ray, the Viking x-ray. We've got their scope and stuff like that. Yeah. A lot of our seizures that we're seeing on 35 aren't that deep, right? To be fair, a handful of compartments and stuff that we've seen here and there, but a lot of them are just running, weed loads back and forth from Oklahoma to Texas, or, the last hard dope seizure we had, they just set 5 kilos in the full board of the passenger floorboard. Nice. In a cardboard box between the passenger's feet. Yeah. And it, I don't even think the cardboard box was closed. It was, my partner walks up and he sees it. He's like, can you get out of the car now? We're going to take that dope from you. So
that's awesome.
It was, I don't know what it is about that particular road. Yeah. There's been a few, in seat backs and in luggage and tires and whatnot. In fact, one of our buddies just got a tire load, I think yesterday or the day before, but for the most part, they're just not that deep there.
Yeah. So I think what it is after you make it that far north, you're already north of Dallas, you're north of Austin, you're north of San Antonio, you're north of Houston, is the the dope that y'all are getting is after the stash house.
Yeah.
The stuff that's going to be deeper and hidden is going to be stuff that's coming across the border, hidden in a trap, and then it goes to a stash house. And whether it be meth or coke, if it's meth, it's probably coming up in liquid. It's getting converted, repackaged up in the Ziploc bags, whatever, and then whoever's running it is picking it up after the stash house and taking it, up north. And then, of course, with the cocaine, the same thing. But like you said, every now and then you'll probably have a load that doesn't stop anywhere between Mexico and its destination. Like, let's say it's going to Chicago,
Right.
like straight to Chicago, or whatever. It's not going to stop anywhere. It's just going to go through. Those will be your deeper concealments. But I think a lot of those are post stash houses. They're going to be
Right.
your 5 to 10 kilos, and they're just going to be in a box or a duffel bag, and and they're like, oh, we made it this far, we're good, right? So, but the one thing I guess that you guys have that's unique is y'all are a big source area for the weed coming back into Texas.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I never, in 2010, when I started, I never thought we'd be in this boat.
Mhm.
Especially where we are in the country, in the middle of the Bible Belt like that. But we passed it might as well be recreational
Mhm.
marijuana law, but it's a medical marijuana exception. So the one thing we did right with that is that we left the possession of marijuana illegal on state statute.
Okay.
We just created a medical exemption for it.
Right.
So they can go to anybody with a doctorate degree and basically get that signed to get a medical
So
card.
like a chiropractor?
Yes.
Really?
There's even jokes that like your dog's veterinarian can sign it. Now, I don't know. I haven't tried it, but it's pretty wide open as far as what the medical conditions and the doctor have to be. And the amounts that a patient can possess are, even felonies in Colorado and California that are recreational states.
Oh, really?
I think they can have 3 ounces on their person and like 72 ounces of edibles and just walking down the street. So, and half a pound at their house, they can grow at their house, all with a patient card.
So what about the distributors, the people that are dealing, or the stores and stuff, the dispensaries? Are they have to be licensed for that?
Yeah, so they have to have, they pay for a license. If you're a processor or a grower, you pay for a separate license for that. And you can have all three. You can be a grower and a processor and have your own dispensary and stuff, and all be on the same facility.
I got you.
But you have to have your separate license and checks and balances for all of that. Now, the laws are tightening up as we're learning over the last few years. I know OMMA, which is the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority, and then OBN, Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics, they're really cracking down on these people that are doing it illegally. And that's the problem that we deal with. It's not the guy that wants to, grow weed and do it by the books and has all of his stuff in a row. He's not the problem.
Right.
It's the ones that are coming in and they're, buying acreages for pennies on the dollar and covering the entire 40 acres with hoop houses and growing, 10,000 plants or 50,000 plants at a time. Those are they end up being 100-pound, 200-pound marijuana loads going south to Texas to you guys. Well, on the flip side of that, on I-35, we'll see them bringing that much cash in too.
Right.
And the problem with that is the state of Oklahoma at least tried to present it as that we would get all this tax revenue off of this, but when it's being sold out the back door, that's not happening. And so people from Texas are coming up, and going to these grows directly, bypassing the dispensaries altogether, bypassing the licensing and all that, and buying straight off of the grow.
Yeah.
And most of those people are not keeping that money domestically.
Yeah.
A lot of our investigations have taken that money overseas, and it's being distributed to multiple countries overseas. That's not helping the economy in Oklahoma at all.
So how many of those people that are doing this are Chinese nationals?
Most.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say all, but it is the commonality in most of those investigations.
Yeah.
I've worked a couple of them where we dove into the finances, and there would be like $500 wire transfers by Western Union. If they got a $20,000 input into their bank, within 24 hours, that 20,000 was gone, and it was all $500 wire transfers to China to different people and different names and stuff. And that money goes in and out of the account within 24 hours.
Yeah.
And they're, hiding their ownership in the LLCs, and they're doing all this stuff. There's attorneys that are over a whole bunch of these grows that have helped them get the documents in order that are getting parts of it. And it just got really, really weird.
Yeah. China's been, I've heard that they've been, they send people over here to go to law school in the States to learn all the United States, like the real estate laws and stuff. And then they come over and then they, facilitate the purchase of land. And
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Chinese people that own tons of land.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
In the United States now because of that.
They, I don't even think that all of them are bad. I just think that there's probably a conglomerate of those individuals that are working against the interests of the United States and of Oklahomans. And, we've had some murders on these grows. We've had some things like that we've dealt with as a state. And, violence goes along with illegal activity, especially drug activity. So we need to curb that as quickly as we can.
Just like on Tulsa King.
Yeah, for sure. I joke, my wife and I've watched that show and it happens. They filmed part of that in our area.
Yeah.
Actually at the hospital that my mom works at. So it was kind of funny. We watched the show when it came out just because we knew they filmed at the hospital. And I'm like, oh, if this isn't like a comedy version of Oklahoma life, it's quite reality. Yeah.
So currently you're doing highway interdiction. When you were on the NARC team, did y'all do any like street level stuff where, like, I know you do, at least in my agency, we do like the surveillance type stuff. We do buys, we work informants, we do all that kind of stuff too. We do some UC stuff, but then also the guys will get out in like a unmarked car with their vests on, and they'll go out and they'll watch a trap house. They'll see a car leave. They'll stop it. They'll do some proactive patrol type stuff in plain clothes. Did y'all do any of that, or?
So kind of, just a little twist on that, because we had two interdictor type individuals that are in that same unit.
Yeah.
We would pull them in. Yeah. So usually those surveillance operations happen in the evening. Yeah. And so we would, the interdiction guys would come off the road and we'd say, hey, we're going to do an office project tonight. Yeah. Let's work from, this hour to that hour. Yeah. And we're just going to try to get stops leaving. And then we'd let the interdictors do the stops. Yeah. So that way we didn't burn up our surveillance units or our undercover cars or anything like that. And so they could stay in place. And if the interdictors got PC for the house off of that stop, they could start writing their warrant in their car and then send it to the judge, and we could be ready to hit it without moving a car off the observation site. So it's the same thing, just working it a little bit differently. Yeah. We've kind of gotten away from that as much anymore because our home agency set up like a street crimes unit, and so they've got patrol guys that have a more proactive job assignment. Yeah. And they can pull them in a little bit and do that. So the interdictors don't have to come in. Now we're happy to do it. I mean, we've got the dogs and stuff available for that. So it's it just doesn't happen as often because it's easier for them to pull them in off the road than bring us up from 3 counties away. Yeah. No, it makes sense. The agency I work for, they have one interdiction guy, but he's not in the same unit as the NARCs. So the NARCs are under the criminal investigation side, and they're all detectives. And then our interdiction guys is on the patrol side. Oh, okay. So there's not, we can use him, but it's not always, he's not always available, because he works his own schedule and stuff, and trying to get a patrol officer off the street to say, hey, I need you to come stop this car. It's like, well, they're on a call or they're, whatever. Yeah. So they found it. We found it, helpful to just do it ourselves, and plus it's fun too. It is a lot of fun. We, like I said, we've done those kind of things, and the I would say the more common way that we did that is for a long time our unit was like the fugitive unit, right? Mm-hmm. So if we had a homicide in town, then we would kind of do that same stuff towards that individual, very targeted, very laser focused on one particular individual that's a homicide suspect or whatever. Yeah, and we kind of did the jump out boy stuff with
Yeah.
that. But
yeah, we've done that too because I'll write a ping for a phone. If we get a phone on somebody that's wanted, I'll write the ping. We'll get it up. We'll go out and watch for them, and
Right.
try to knock them off, that kind of stuff too. So, you want to talk about how you transitioned into? Well, let me say this. Why don't you talk about your class? So if people are interested in coming to your class and they think it's an interdiction class, or is it a proactive patrol class, or kind of explain what it is that you teach in your class.
Okay. So the class is called Proper Patrol.
Okay.
And it's not the only class that Leo Den has. We've got several instructors now that have their own classes, but like our flagship, the one that we started it with is, and the one I teach is called Proper Patrol. And it's a 2-day, 16-hour class. And I kind of take a little bit from each part of my experience, working patrol and as a proactive officer, and then working undercover investigations and buys and stuff, and then working on the interdiction side. I take things that I've learned in all of those and put it into a class that is designed for proactive officers that are on patrol to get the most out of their job.
I gotcha.
So it's not necessarily an interdiction class, and a lot of videos in the class that are going to illustrate the topics I'm talking about are my interdiction videos, because that's the content that I have. But we talk about interviews and interrogations and case law and all the things that a proactive officer needs to know to go out and be successful. But it's more geared towards a patrol officer's sense of being proactive than it is a basic interdiction class or anything like that.
I gotcha.
One thing that I think sets that up uniquely is that it's not just a lecture class where I'm going through a PowerPoint. The whole class is designed around a scenario that runs parallel to the presentation.
Okay.
And so I will give the students in the class a scenario bite, for lack of a better term. There's just a portion of the scenario that comes out, and then we discuss it as a unit, as a group, out loud with everybody. Yeah. And what would you do in this situation? What would you do in that situation? And that kind of develops the case or the class up to the next part of the presentation. Okay. So there might be 4, 5, or 6 slides and a video, and then another part of the scenario, and 4, 5, or 6 slides and another part of the scenario. And as the light bulbs kind of come on, it's usually like the beginning of day 2, maybe an hour or 2 into the beginning of day 2, they realize the scenario is building on itself, and they're taking a seemingly mundane call that all patrol officers take. And by the end of day 2, they are in a trafficking level arrest because of the proactive decisions that they made along the way.
Okay.
And they end up with several people in custody. And, we use real life examples of those kind of cases to illustrate the points that they need to know.
That's awesome. That's a unique approach to just getting the information out there. I guess it kind of helps, encourage critical thinking.
Absolutely. So that's how I focus as an instructor, is that I can put things out in front of you that teach you, whether it's firearms, how to qualify, straight trigger pull and stuff like that. But that doesn't make you a good gunfighter.
Right.
I can show you how to do SFSTs, but it doesn't make you a good report writer in the event that somebody can't do SFSTs.
Right.
So I'm hoping to push patrol officers to be proactive and to have better critical thinking skills because they know and understand case law, and they've kind of been exposed to things that are maybe a little less conventional than what their FTO taught them.
Yeah.
And then I think we do overall we do a terrible job as a community understanding case law, right? It's the high level investigators or the more experienced sergeants on patrol that kind of know case law. But our rookies aren't being exposed to that the same way. And I've gone back through and taught at an academy before that had a legal block a couple weeks ago and asked them about reasonable suspicion. And they can't tell me, you know, because they haven't put an applicable mindset to that process yet. Right. And so I focus a lot of time in our class about those burdens of proof and explaining them so that they understand how to actually articulate. We may know what the term is and what it means that we can do, but we do a really bad job as a whole, I'm bashing on all of us, that articulating reasonable suspicion and probable cause. And when we get challenged on it in the stand, it's harder when you don't understand the process, when you don't understand the burden of proof to be able to stand up and say, well, no, I extended that stop because I had reasonable suspicion, but the defense attorney's trying to tell you you didn't, and you kind of don't understand it yourself. And so I spend a lot of time there on the class because I want them to go out with confidence and know, I can extend the stop because I understand this burden of proof, or, I know I can search this car because I have probable cause, and they do it with confidence, and then they testify with confidence, and they win their cases with confidence. So
that's awesome. Where all are you offering your class at right now?
We've got a couple classes scheduled in Oklahoma. We have one coming up in Arkansas next. So Searcy, Arkansas is next on the books. Then we have a lot in Oklahoma after that in May.
Mm-hmm. Anything in Texas?
We don't have a Texas one currently scheduled, although we're always open to get hosts. We're working with, actually BS Narcotics was trying to help us get a facility somewhere around, Austin or Killeen or something like that, that we can go to. We're working on that one. We'll get it lined out and on the books. Our schedule ended up being right about the time that MVCI is coming to Texas. Yeah. And I was afraid to put something on the books and kind of, take away from people that might want to go there or whatever. Yeah. So we're trying to iron that one out.
Makes sense.
But, Texas, hopefully somebody want to host us in the DFW area. Yeah. We'd love to come there. It's not a far drive for us. Texas is exciting. I've taught here before. We just don't currently have a class scheduled. We have one in Thackerville, Oklahoma, though. And that one is just across the Red River. So 15 miles, maybe.
Gotcha.
If anybody knows where that big casino is, just north of the Texas-Oklahoma line.
On 35?
On 35. Yeah. It's right there. We'll be hosting that one later this year. That's a good agency. They've got a big casino there and nice facilities for everybody to see. And a lot of people from northern Texas could come to that one too. Yeah. We'll make it applicable for those type of people if they're in the class. I do take the class in research case law, research state law for that particular region. Yeah. But if I have classes that I know, maybe there's a Kansas guy in my Oklahoma class, I'll make sure to set some time aside to discuss his individual nuances because they are different, a different circuit. So when you
same circuit, but when you teach a class, this particular class, is it just you that's instructing, or do you bring another instructor with you? Or
no, for proper patrol, it's just me. I'll go wherever and teach the class. We don't make the hosts pay to do it. I think it might be kind of standard at this point, but we'll set it up with the host agency, and then as we get more seats paid, like 10 seats paid, we offer them free seats. And it goes up from there. Yeah. So they can end up, if we got 20 people in the class, they get 2 or 3 free seats. Yeah. And then we're exploring some other options that might be venue specific or agency specific. Yeah. So if, Austin PD wanted to host us, maybe we just say it was a set price for that PD, and they could sell their seats to other agencies or whatever to fill the class up themselves. Yeah. But we're open to exploring those options. We have some other instructors as well. We brought in Monica 2 years ago, I think, and she does like a fitness and wellness class. She's a CrossFit certified, everything, nutrition coach. She has an online business, and she does a fantastic job with the people that are wanting to, survive shift work and be healthy and meal prep and stuff. Her expertise is in that. And, we've been talking with Jared from down south. He's a canine handler. He's got a killer program for canine officers that want to, as a canine officer myself, even when I went through the multiple classes that I've been through, everyone's like, hey, you need to document your training hours. You need to do this and that, but they don't actually show you what that means, Right. So what does a canine deployment log look like? What does a training log look like? How do you actually do it right instead of just putting words on paper? Yeah. And then problem solving for your particular dog, because you'll solve a problem over here and you'll create a problem over here, and that's just canine handling. And so Jared does a really good job with stuff like that. He's my go-to guy for myself, even when I've got issues. And so he's got his class. And then most excitedly, we just brought on one of the tactical medics from our SWAT team. Okay. I've been working with him on the SWAT team for 13 years.
Yeah.
If I got hurt on the job on a SWAT call out, he's my guy. I want him to be there. His name is Zach, and he teaches a tactical medic class and brings in props to learn how to apply tourniquets, to learn how to do this wound packing, and he talks about all the equipment that you need and what you should buy and shouldn't waste your money on. Yeah. And he does a tremendous job. I actually sat in. I thought he'd need assistance to like move mannequins and stuff like that. So I sat in on the pilot class a couple months ago, and I was blown away. Like, tremendous class. Everybody we had there was like, I never even considered this stuff. And, you know, he's a walking book of knowledge when it comes to medical stuff. And so I'm super excited and blessed to have all of those instructors on board as well.
Gotcha. What's the name of that class?
Zach's is Respond and Rescue.
Okay.
For a sense of having a plan and having some training in place before you ever get to those situations that we all hope we never have to go to. Yeah. But I'm sure you have as well. I know I have. You know, I've shown up on this call and there's been a lag in my brain of like, crap. Yeah. That's a lot of blood. What do I do now? Zach takes all that away, right? Okay. Like in his class, you show up and you just go right to work because he's run you through rep after rep after rep. And those people that don't like to get up and be involved, they may not like his class because he's going to make you get up and be involved, and he's not going to let you walk out without having confidence that you know what to do. Right. Take care of yourself and your partner and the citizens. So,
okay. So, if people want to get information about your classes, where would they go?
So all of our classes, and all the instructors' bios and everything is on our website. So it's www.leodenllc.com. Okay. You know, just drop under the instructor tab and you can see all of their credentials and their bios. And then if you click over to classes, it'll have a detailed description of all the classes. For Oklahoma-based classes and venues, everything is state certified with CLEAT. And there's a lot of mental health hours. Proper Patrol has mental health hours. Monica's Fit for Duty has mental health hours. And we're happy to provide that because that's, you know, something that we need. Yeah. And then, you know, when we go to other states, we try to do the same thing. If those states do certify hours, then we reach out ahead of time and get them certified so that the people get the credit that they deserve.
That's awesome. I will put a link to that down in the video description, on this video. Let's touch on a couple things that you talked about. So you are a canine handler currently, right?
Yes. Okay. I have a single purpose. If there is such a thing as a single purpose Belgian Malinois, that's what I have. She's full crazy. Yeah. And she'll bite, but it's usually just to protect me. Okay. But she's single purpose narcotics detection. And I mean, she's awesome. Yeah. It's kind of a funny story. My partner got a dog first. So my partner from my same agency, he was the first one of the three of us to get a dog. And, you know, we were a brand new interdiction team with a dog, and we ran that dude ragged. Yeah. Like, hey, I need a dog on all stops. Cause that's what you do when you first get a dog to the unit. So
I need a dog.
He was running from stop to stop to stop and was never getting to make his own. Yeah. And so I saw that a couple weeks in after he came back with his dog. And I'm like, this isn't fair. And he'd be doing his canine logs and stuff. And I'm like, man, this isn't fair. So I wanted to spread the wealth a little bit. And so I asked our boss, you know, the task force chief, I was like, hey, what do you think about getting another dog? I think it's fair to share the load a little bit so we don't just run him out into the ground. And he was like, if you want one, we'll get you one. Like, that's the kind of boss he is. And literally I went to the next canine school available. Yeah. And so, but the funny thing was with Dave's dog, he wanted, because he's got little kids at home and a lot of animals around, his little hobby farm, he wanted something really chill that wasn't aggressive or anything. So he asked for a lab. They didn't have a lab available at the time, but they had a black German Shepherd, and they said, this is as much of a Labrador as you could find in a Labrador. And so we didn't really believe him. And then when Dave came back with the dog, I mean, this dog is the chillest German Shepherd you've ever seen. Yeah. He'll just lean up against you and love on you. He won't open his mouth or put it on anything but a tennis ball. Yeah. But that came with some changes on the interstate where we go was he was a little bit skittish of the highway. He was a little bit, he had to get ramped up a little bit to get excited to work. And until my partner kind of figured him out, there was a learning curve for all of us where, hey, the dog's just, it's storming outside. He didn't want to work. And that was about the time that I was looking for mine. So I said, hey, you remember Tribby? I was talking to the vendor. I was like, if you remember Tribby, I want the opposite.
Yeah.
Right. Like I want a Ferrari if he's a Cadillac. And the guy's like, okay. So my dog's name when I picked her up from the vendor was actually Crazy.
Crazy.
And for legal purposes, we didn't think we'd keep the name for paperwork and stuff like that. I didn't want to testify to what Crazy indicated to on the reports. But I changed her name, or my 2-year-old, who when I brought her home, he was 2 at the time and very into Paw Patrol. So her name was Chase when we got home.
Nice.
And she's been great. I mean, it took a little bit to figure her out as well. Because like I said, we had a Ferrari versus a Cadillac. And so I have to run her a lot differently. I pretty much sprint behind her when I tell her to go. Yeah. And instead of running on a 6-foot leash, I have to run on a 10 because she'll run out of 6 foot before I can catch up.
Yeah.
But, man, she's awesome. All our dogs are really, really good. We've got some really good mentors in that field that have helped us come a long way.
Do you keep her, at home, I guess? Yeah.
She goes everywhere with me. In fact, we've kind of gotten to the point as a family that if we're going to go anywhere and my family or her family can't come by and let the dog out. Like if it's more than one night or so, we'll just take her with us on these trips and stuff. But like if I go training out of town and my family's not going to be home my wife's not going to be home to take care of her, then I'll just take her with me.
Gotcha.
She does better because she's such a high drive Malinois that she's got to have a job or she's going to get anxious and that anxiety turns into problems. And so I have to kind of keep her working even my days off. Yeah. I've got to keep her active and stimulated mentally or she's going to cause hectic.
Yeah. And she's cool around the family?
Not necessarily. Yeah. If I'm out, we've got some rules. I've got small kids. And so we've got some rules. They don't touch her toys. They don't run around her. That's just a high prey dog. Yeah. I don't think she would actively, aggressively go after them for anything, but in an accidental prey drive type trigger that could happen. So they know the rules. They don't run by her kennel. They don't run if she's out of the kennel, if she's working. And they don't touch her toys ever. And then they coexist just fine.
That's cool.
Now if they broke the rules or whatever, she's got really good obedience commands, so I could down her wherever, but just for the sake of not having any accidental issues, we kind of keep that whole life separate. They don't necessarily, they like our other dogs. She barks a lot and she's more aggressive. And so they're not particularly fond of her. Yeah. But they understand her purpose is a little bit different than the house dogs too. So.
Yeah. I know there's some guys that have dogs that when they come home, their working dog has to go in the kennel and it stays there. That's where it lives. It knows that when I come home, this is where I live. Yep. And then when it's time to go to work, I come out, I get in the car and I go to work, and they're not a house dog. They don't, interact with the family. They don't interact with other dogs. They're, that's their job. They're a tool. They're a, you know what I'm saying?
That's a lot of what we do. Yeah. She's actually really good around other dogs, so she can be around our house dogs. And, but yeah, she gets kenneled at home. And then at night I bring her inside in the garage, where it's climate controlled. And then as soon as I wake up, she goes back outside unless we're going to work. So when I get out, when I wake up in the morning and I'm getting ready for work, I'll let her out as I'm getting ready and getting the car ready and stuff like that. And she'll just kind of be milling around, but it's just me up and it kind of helps her relax and get in tune. And then when I say kennel up, she'll jump in the car and turns it on. So
yeah, that's cool. That's cool. The other thing I wanted to touch on was you said, are you on SWAT too?
Yeah. Probably one of the many highlights of my career is being with those guys. I started SWAT in 2012.
Okay.
I came up as a SHIELD guy and spent a lot of time there in kind of the riot issue time, when we had the COVID and defund the police and
the summer of love is what we call that.
When that happened, I transitioned into I got baptized by fire, as I call it, into the team leader role.
Okay.
And so I'm actually in charge of one of our entry element teams. So I have like 6 or 7 guys that are underneath me, and we respond as a unit to whatever call we have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been so fun to pour into these SWAT guys, and just to watch them grow and to make decisions on their own, that
Mm-hmm.
I can sit back 5 or 6 people back and watch these guys in front of me do amazing work and to take care of themselves and each other. And they make my job so easy, right? As a team leader, I have to do a lot of communicating with the administration and the captains on the call that aren't seeing what I'm seeing. And those guys up in front, they're magical. Like, I just watch them work and I'm like, hey, it's all taken care of, It's an easy business. So, we've had some rough calls. We've had some calls where shots were fired and stuff like that. But to watch these guys excel and to take things that they just grow all the time, and they have true love for one another that helps us get through anything. It's amazing. It's a lot of fun. We're not a full-time team.
Mm-hmm.
We train 2 days a month, and, it's kind of like the National Guard of SWAT, but it's training time. They come keyed up and ready to work. And when I call and say, hey, we got to go to work, they're, whether it's night shift or a day shift or whatever, and I can wake them up anytime, and they're like, all right, boss, let's go. So they're keyed up and ready to go. So.
Now, is that team part of your home agency?
So it's probably been about 2 years now. Our home agency had a SWAT team for like 45 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that's where the majority of these tight knit family type bonds have come from. But about 2 years ago, we merged with a couple other agencies nearby. And so we have, they call it a multi-jurisdictional team now. Yeah. And so we brought on a team from the city just north of us, and then the county that the team is seated in. And they've just kind of it's all meshed together pretty well. Now there's some growing pains, and, we do this tactic, they do that tactic. We've had to mesh them out. But that's what those grown-up feelings and those grown-up conversations happen. And we hash it out, and then we figure out what works best for this new team. But it's been great to have those resources. We used to go from having 12 bodies for a SWAT call out to now I've got 25 available, something like that. So it's pretty cool.
And so y'all break it up into teams?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you have a team of like 8 dudes, and then there's another team leader that has a team of however many people.
Exactly.
And so now whenever y'all go, let's say y'all go to a barricade or something like that, does everybody go, or is it team specific?
It depends on the volatility. If it's a really volatile, shots are actively being fired or something, they might send everybody right then.
Yeah.
But a lot of times the bosses are trying to hold back people because we've had some call outs that have gone 12, 14, 18 hours long, whatever. And to have another team that can just rotate right into the operational period, that's the buzzword, is having the next operational period. So our bosses are thinking proactively to the next day or whatever, like if this thing draws out. So they may not send everybody right at once. We don't necessarily have a on-call schedule where, like, I know some teams will down, this team's down for 48 hours or whatever. We're not necessarily like that. We kind of rotate a little bit. And then the jurisdictions, the one just north of us that has guys on the team, they may all go to a primary call in theirs, and we'll send 4 from our team. And so, and then vice versa, So if they needed more resources, we can always call them out, but it doesn't always mean everybody goes every time.
Yeah. So do y'all run y'all's warrants and stuff for y'all's narc teams?
No, not unless certain criteria are met. We have the matrix or whatever we go by, but for a general sense, our narc team, we just served it ourselves.
Okay.
Most of those guys are on the SWAT team anyway, or have been. And so, how it is when you press we call it the big green button. When you press the big green button and all the SWAT guys get activated, that is going to trigger a long time, for people to respond. And then there's planning aspects that go into it. Our little green button over here with the NARC team to serve their own warrants is a lot more nimble. Yeah. Things aren't maybe necessarily as classified as high risk, and so we just do those ourselves.
How many guys are on the NARC team that would enable them to be able to hit their own houses?
Total, we have about 5 or 6.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, 6, counting the boss. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's, so our local unit has, we have a sergeant, and then we have 3 local detectives, and then, one person assigned out to a full-time task force spot with a federal agency.
Yeah.
So, so technically there's 5, but a lot of times if we need something, so there's one of the dudes on our the NARC team is one of the team leaders on the SWAT team as well. And so, our team gets a lot of work, as far as hitting houses and stuff for the team gets a lot of work hitting houses for the NARC team because, and our SWAT team is not called a SWAT team. It's called an SRT team, but it's not that big. I think they've got 12 or 13 people maybe, but anyhow, cool. So how do you manage, being able to juggle being a interdiction officer, a, K9 officer, a SWAT team leader, and, running a business and teaching? Like, how is that possible? I mean, you're juggling a bunch of stuff there.
Man, I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
It's the grace of God, honestly, because I don't operate on a lot of sleep, and I get up early and I try to spend a little bit of time, waking up and getting ready for the day. And then, I might spend a little 30 minutes or an hour on the company stuff, get my workout done, and then go to work. Now, I might be fielding some SWAT calls or questions throughout the day on the company stuff. But as I'm watching cars go down the interstate, I can kind of multitask on a few things as long as I'm not too distracted. And then, when I come home, one thing we haven't talked about is one of my biggest hobbies is jujitsu now, for the last several years. And so most of our SWAT guys are all into jujitsu, and we've got a black belt in house now, and we're all kind of training together all the time. And so that, again, I think allows my brain the break to, you can't really focus on casework or company work or anything like that when you're practicing jujitsu. So although it takes a lot of time, it's a good reset on several days a week. And then I can come back out for refreshed. And then we hit, if there's anything else like updating registrations and stuff like that need to be done in the company, I do that when I get home, and then hit the bed and go prepare it again the next day. And then I catch up a lot of stuff on the weekends. If we're posting classes or reaching out to other agencies, it's usually on the weekends. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's another 2 things that I didn't add to that, list of things between the interdiction, the K9, the SWAT, the business, but then you also have the family and the spiritual side, what, how do you juggle time to make sure that you're having time with your family, having time to go to church and, do that kind of stuff too?
Yeah. So, Sundays are usually almost always dedicated family day. We go to church, we spend a lot of time there. And then afterwards we all go to, lunch as a family. And then, we come home and kind of just decompress and watch movies or whatever. And then Saturdays are kind of the same. I might be working on a video on the couch with like one earbud in or whatever while the kids are playing or whatever. And then a lot of times we'll do things in the evenings, together. My kids both do or both have done jujitsu. My youngest is taking a little break right now, but my oldest is there with me several nights a week. And so that's been a really good thing for him and I. He's doesn't have the same exact personality as I do, which he has a personality like his mama, and he's not super outdoorsy or anything like I am. And I wondered when he was really young, like if we would find anything to bond over, like how do he's more into video games and reading. And I'm like, man, that's like, what do I bond with this kid over? And he found jujitsu really to be something that he wanted to do first. And I was hypocritical at best because I'd been training guys like in defensive tactics and telling them, you need to be training. And it was my 5-year-old at the time that like talked me into being consistent with training. And so once he started, it was kind of that thing that we can do. He'll walk up and try to put me in an RNC or whatever all the time. And so he finds it fun, and I like to bring out that competitive edge in him and to teach him something that's a long lasting, life changing, benefit.
Yeah.
And so I kind of get to coach his class alongside him and spend a lot of time with him there. And it's kind of a family thing. You know, my wife brings the boys and meets me there. And so, the gym is kind of our second home.
Yeah.
And that helps a lot too.
Yeah. There was had a proud dad moment the other day. My daughter's 12 and is in the jiu-jitsu gym every chance it's open. It's often a source of contention if we're not able to take her. But I was watching her roll the other day, and there was I don't know how old this kid was. He was probably 16, 17. He was bigger than her, and I saw him rolling. And next thing I look over, and my daughter's got him in an arm bar, and he's like crying out in pain, and she almost broke his arm. And the professor was like, "Whoa, like, okay, hold on." And the professor was like, "Well, why didn't you tap?" And he's like, "I didn't. I like in my mind, I was telling myself to tap, but like it wasn't coming out." And my daughter was like, "Well, he wasn't tapping, so I wasn't stopping." And like she literally almost snapped this dude's arm in half, and I was like, "There we go."
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
One thing I've done with my son to try to like push him is that on the way there, I'll talk about, I want you to pick a technique of the day or a submission of the day, and I want to see you do your absolute best to hit that. You know, he's been doing it long enough now that he's on his 4th year, and I can say, "Hey, I want you to do an RNC, or I want you to do an armbar," and he can find his way in the rolls to those places. And so that has kind of been, it's a little bit of a challenge, like something for him to think about during the roll, and that has excelled his game. Even the last 3 months so far, because he'll be thinking, "Hey, I got to do this thing because Dad said to try to look for it or whatever," and that's fun too. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, kind of the same thing. So I've got an 8-year-old, and he tried jiu-jitsu for a little while, but it was just too. He had trouble staying focused on trying to learn the technique and stuff. And but my daughter, like I said, is 12, and I mean that's her jam. Between that and then we go to the range, and she's a competitive handgun shooter as well.
That's awesome.
And so we go and we do steel challenges and stuff, and she has a 22 with an optic on it. And she, the first time I took her, we went there. And the course of fire on this particular deal is supposed to take 100 rounds. If you hit every single target the first time, it takes 100 rounds, right? It's each heat is 25 rounds, and there's 4 of them, right? So I had her ammo and everything, and then by the time we got done, she had only used 105 rounds.
That's awesome.
I was like, and the adult, there was a bunch of men there, and they were like, "Where'd you learn how to shoot?" She's like, "Oh, I don't know, And so it was cool. It was other things. So I'm like, with her almost a teenager, I'm like, between her knowing how to shoot and she can break your arm in a arm bar or put you in a Kimura or something, I'm like, I think she'll be good.
Yeah, amazing. And it's great to see that in your kids. And almost as good is seeing that in these younger guys that we're bringing up. Our culture is shifting in our department right now, and it's because we have these black and brown and purple belts in-house that are pushing training at our department so hard. And we've come up with like the combat club for our department. We meet once a month, and there's guys from all different gyms because they live in different parts of the city, but they come together and do this too. And it's like every month it grows and grows and grows, and we're getting all these, people that just started, or academy cadets that have just graduated. They join a gym right away, and they get to training. And, use of forces are going down, injuries are going down, guys are getting, closer together. It's just a lot of fun, and the relationships get built, and they take care of one another. Like it's culture changing. Yeah. And we're excited to see that happening too.
Yeah. I had a video episode I put out a while back. It was a 2-part episode with a 3rd degree black belt at the gym that my kids go to. did an episode with him. If anybody wants to go check that out, and he talks a lot about jiu-jitsu and, all the different stuff. But so, yeah, it's a big, I've noticed it's a big, emerging, I don't know if we'll call it a trend, but it's a,
it's the fastest growing sport
in
America right now, from what I understand. And I love to see the cops, almost every class I go to now, I talk about this just a little bit. And I see more and more hands going up when I ask if they train. And, it's sometimes if the timing will allow on these classes that I travel to, like I'll try to jump in a gym with them and just try to roll and get some camaraderie there and build the networking part of it together. Cause, that's part of what LEODEN stands for actually is law enforcement officer development, education, and networking.
Oh, okay.
And so, just to have a group that it doesn't just meet at work or whatever, and they kind of grow together as a family and to reach out and be able to talk to people. And then you also see it in the mental health side too, I wasn't always in the most comfortable space to talk about that, but I think jiu-jitsu for me is kind of my therapy, right? And not just because of the physical exertion and stuff like that, but because I have guys there that are, tag team guys or other detectives or other people. Like I have people there that kind of understand the job. We're outside of the setting of work. Right. And we can go, hey, that was a tough call or whatever. And we can kind of sit in the corner and kind of talk about it if we need to, or let's just get after it. And that stuff is important too. So
one more thing, and then we'll start to wrap this up a little bit. How has your faith been? How has your faith helped you be able to get through calls and deal with the stresses of the job and the things that we see and that kind of stuff, to be able to still be a productive officer, after 15 years?
I think that a lot of that goes to people that you put around yourself that help encourage your faith. And for me, one of my best friends in the world happens to be the partner that I sit side by side on the interstate with every day, who happens to be the most faithful person that I know.
That's awesome.
And so, a long time ago, we made ourselves that promise that we would be that for one another. And, almost brings me to tears to talk about what that guy means to me, because he has been such an influential part of my life. And he hasn't always had the easiest situations either. He was involved. He was the second to show up in an officer involved shooting with a guy that actually was filling my spot for the day. And that partner, he would come out when one or two of us were gone off the interstate. If I was at SWAT training, this guy would come out. And it just so happened that he had got involved in an officer involved shooting, and it was bad. He got shot in the neck and in the shoulder and in the chest.
Wow.
And Dave was the first one there. And that wasn't easy. They were a long ways away from really any help. Radio communications, of course, it's going to be in that one dead spot of where things happen. Cell phones aren't working. He called 911. The 911 operator disconnected from him when he started to explain what was going on. All the calamity of things that happen. And that dude's still the most faithful person in the world. Luckily, that officer, by the grace of God, survived and is back to work and healthy and everything's fine. And we're all praise God for that. But Dave, it wasn't always easy for him either, know, and, he's a shining example of what a faithful person is. And so you can't work next to people like that and not have some of that rub off on you.
Yeah.
He's saved my life more than once. He's one of those, he's a guardian angel.
Yeah.
On patrol, we had an instance where I was sent to a call and he was sent to a call, and he diverted his call on his own because he felt like he needed to be there. And he did. We had a guy try to pull a gun on me, and he was in the shadows and took care of that guy before he ended up trying to hurt me. So he was like, man, I just had a tug that I needed to be there. And so I did. And, I'll take that crash in a second. And so he, didn't have to shoot him, but kind of, he apprehended him before he was able to do anything to me. And I never saw him. He was walking up behind me. So, you just can't work around people like that and not have some of that rub off on you. And, go to church every week, and I try to pour into my kids. And, on the shirt and the tagline on all the company is Proverbs 28. And, I think that highlights what this company means and what I stand for. We want to be proactive, and we want to go after bad guys. But at the same time, we have to keep faith at the forefront of that, because in my opinion, that's why we're doing this, to try to make our communities and our state and country safer for those that are not having to put themselves on the line. And so, I guess that kind of sums it up.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's I think it's important because, having that guy that kind of, I guess, like like an accountability partner kind of, to help keep you in line, and you keep him, like, I'm saying, like, you
absolutely, that's exactly what it is.
Because I can see, I know in my experience, where, I go to church, and, or I'm this way around this group of people, and then, I go to work and there's not any of that support, and it's very, very easy to get off into that other part of or other side of the fence, basically.
Absolutely.
And you're like, man, that's not who I'm supposed to be, but it's, the culture is very easy to go way off track, and having somebody that'll keep you going the right direction is important.
I think that's 100% the nail on the head. And that's who Dave is, for sure.
Yeah.
There's multiple, he's not the only one. The other team leader that I'm good counterparts with, I've gone to him in some faithful situations as well. When my wife was pregnant with our youngest, there were some complications along the way. And I remember going to both of those guys really, really early in her pregnancy when we had some questions of his health and, his development, whether or not, like, I just needed more prayers. And so I actively went and seeked those people out to get extra prayer for my family and for, my ability to stay focused at work, just because I was so distracted with those thoughts and worries. And he's fine now, by the way, because of those people that are around me. And that's just the culture that I try to keep myself around,
That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate all the conversation, and appreciate you coming down here to Dallas and meeting with me. I will, like I said, put all your links in the video description, and you guys go check out Leo Den and try to sign up for a class if you're in Oklahoma, or, take some time, drive up to Oklahoma and get in a class. So I appreciate it. And, until next time, guys, we'll see you down the road on Texas Narcos.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Texas Narcos Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, share our podcast with your friends and family. You can find Texas Narcos Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Your continued support helps us to bring you stories like the one you just heard. Thank you. God bless, and we'll see you down the road on Texas Narcos.